We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
So the fights are over. If you're planning on going home and then taking a nap and then watching some, Saturday night fights, that ain't happening. For some reason, Long Island was the location and the afternoon was the time. And Brian Ortega looks like he might be out for a while. Shoulder dislocation. Yair Rodriguez ends up winning that one by TKO. Welcome back into the show. Tapped Out on the BetQL Network. Brendan Tobin, Sean Levine, and now good friend of the show, the Bane himself, Ben Davis is back. First of all, bro, before we get into today's fights and next week and all that, how was International Fight Week? Because I saw your name coming up a whole lot. How'd that go down?
It was great, man. Now, International Fight Week, I think, for any combat sports fan is a must-attend event. Again, it is only once a year. The expo, all of the fighters, the different meet and greet opportunities, and then they do make such a concentrated effort to maximize that pay-per-view. I would say if you aren't in Vegas, but you do want to get there at least once a year, target that first week of July because it's certainly one you don't want to miss.
Well, it was definitely a fun card and all that, but we just had an interesting ending there, Ben, with the Yair and Ortega fight. We were all looking forward to it, and it was a fire night of fights too, or a fire day of fights. So a bit of a disappointing ending. Kind of everything that you just take out of it. What did you make of the first round that we basically got to see, and the way that it ends, what was basically a title eliminator? What does Yair take out of this?
So to step back really quickly and look at the larger landscape of the top five at 145, you have Josh Emmett and Calvin Kattar, who just in Austin, Texas, had a very close 5-round affair. And Emmett coming out of that, it didn't seem like people were big on him getting a title shot. It was a very close split decision. Most of the media scored it for Calvin Kattar. No big statements were made for Josh Emmett. Same situation kind of occurs here, where you get T-City and Yair Rodriguez both coming off of losses, and it just didn't feel like there was a big statement. They looked good. I was very happy with each fighter's approach. It seemed like Ortega's pressure was maybe getting to Rodriguez a little bit, but the intangibles, the X factors, the questions still quite remain. And because neither of these four top featherweights made big statements, I simply don't know. It's been suggested maybe an interim title fight, Rodriguez, Josh Emmett, run that, or just maybe even have that as a #1 contender fight in a couple months. I think that makes the most sense given Volkanovski's surgery that he does need to have on the hand. But it is, it is frustrating at the end of the day that this is how the event ends. Because like you mentioned, it was a great day of fights.
So for a couple of old guys here, me and BT, a question to ask a young guy, you, Ben the Bane Davis, about another young up-and-comer in Paddy Pimblett. It's just going to be a simple one. Is he overrated?
It's tough to answer because I think he's rated about as good as he is. But people love him despite that. I think many recognize that he's not going to be a champion. We look at his losses in Cage Warriors. We look at some of the fights where he struggled in his debut, in his sophomore appearance in the UFC's Octagon, kind of, the licks that he's taking. That's going to catch up to him at some point. I think most people realize it. But until we get there, I think a lot of people are just enjoying the ride. He's a fun character. He's a great personality. Personally, I think the question isn't to ask, is Paddy Pimblett overrated? Is Jordan Levitt underrated? I think that Levitt's flying deep under the radar, and he's definitely going to surprise some people by this time next week.
We were just talking a little bit about the main event with Eric previously, Ben. This is, Tom Aspinall's been so impressive. You want to talk about underrated, overrated. This guy, a lot of the questions that were asked the last time around against Volkov, does he have the experience to go 5 rounds? He just continues to go out there and shine every time, and you feel like he can't top his performances. But Curtis Blaydes, he's kind of like that guy. Like, if it wasn't Francis Ngannou, maybe he would be the guy that's at the top right now. So is this the test that you think gets to Tom Aspinall, or is that guy the real deal? Like, is he going to continue to go forth and piece up every single test that's thrown in front of him?
I think win or lose against Curtis Razor Blaydes, Tom Aspinall has certainly shown that he belongs in the top of that division. He's a high caliber player at 265, one that we have not seen as well-rounded in a very long time. But Curtis Blaydes is certainly the man to beat if you want to get into that. Again, he's only lost to Francis Ngannou on 2 occasions, Derek Lewis on 1 occasion, and those are big power punchers. Aspinall is not really that guy. He does have a lot of power in his hands, but, he's much more of a volume guy, or he'll look to get it to the ground. Like, again, he's just well-rounded. So this is a question for both guys. Is Blaydes finally going to lose to someone that doesn't have dynamite in the hands, or will Aspinall kind of find some more answers? I don't know. I think that if Tom wins here, fantastic. More, air in the sails leading to that title shot. If Blaydes wins, that's also great. I like Curtis Blaydes. He's a great guy. He's a hard worker. He has a skill set at 265 that not a lot of other people have. But I will say, I do think Aspinall gets it done. I just think he's that good, man. He certainly is that good.
At Ben the Bane Davis on Twitter. Ben the Bane joining us here on Tapped Out. Let's jump around here a little bit, Bane. Islam versus Charles Oliveira is official October 22nd. I was going to say for Oliveira's belt, but technically, air quotes, he's not holding on to the belt right now. I haven't seen what the odds are. Me and BT have been talking about this for a while. Is it crazy to think that Islam, he's not going to be a favorite in this fight, but maybe like just a plus 120, something like that?
It should be close. If you're going to be an odds maker for this one, you want to line it pretty tight because of how Islam has looked. You don't want to put any disrespect on his name, but at the same time, like you mentioned, in my mind, this is still Oliveira's belt. He's still the king of this division. He deserves that respect when it does come down to the booking and the betting. So I would say Oliveira minus 180, Islam like plus 175, plus 180 on that front if I were going to line it. But in terms of how I think the fight's going to go, I feel like most are going to be surprised at Islam's success on the feet. I think he's got good striking. I think it's really grown over the last couple of years. And Oliveira is excellent striking as well. And I think that there's going to be a big negate of the grappling. I think it's going to cancel each other out, and we're going to be on the feet a lot more than we typically see with Islam. And I think he's going to answer a couple questions that people have had about his ability to hang with people in the striking department. So I'm hoping it to be a good one. I do predict Oliveira to get that belt back around the waist as it should be. But I'm also assuming it's going to be a good fight. Now, the question that I have for you guys is Abu Dhabi versus Brazil. Charles Oliveira said he did not want to go to the Middle East. Now he is. That's got to be frustrating for him. I wish they did it in Brazil. Not going to lie.
Yeah, I think that would be we were talking last week, just kind of spitball what Oliveira's next fight would be. We said we would love if they brought McGregor back to Brazil to fight Oliveira, even if he kind of doesn't deserve it. Just all of the drama that would have brought off the old Jose Aldo stuff, how fun that would have been. Even have Aldo cage side for that. That would have been a lot of fun. I'm with you, man. That would have been a great idea. It's, bummer that we haven't gotten a fight in Brazil. There's such an important it's such an important country to the sport. You mentioned Islam. He's going to surprise a lot of people. Is there an element of you or any element of you that thinks too much too soon? Like he still hasn't really had that test yet. Not to his fault, because he had the Bobby Green fight that came up last minute, but he's kind of just going into the deep end here. I know that he trains with Absolute Animals and he's Khabib's protege, but is just jumping into the title fight without necessarily taking out any of the top guys. Do you think that that's the best path to the title? Like, do you think that he is ready for something like this?
Whether or not we think he's ready for it, it seems to be the only way that he's going to get it because of all the opponents pulling out, all of these fights falling apart. I don't blame Islam Makhachev, really. People talk a lot of smack about whether or not he deserves this chance. It's not like he's doing things to not get it. RDA's pulling out. These other people are pulling out. But then he's also accepting these short notice fights and then dominating. Granted, they aren't the caliber of Charles Oliveira, Poirier, Gaethje. But I do think that this is the only path that he's really able to go down simply by how history has played out. Now, do I think that there's more known about Oliveira and Charles's ability at this elite platform? Yes. It's documented that he can hang with those guys, beat them, and finish them. Islam hasn't proven that, but I think that still he's rated quite fairly. He's been so dominant over these guys that aren't as high caliber that I can look at it and say, sure, he hasn't beaten Poirier and dominated him like he did with Bobby Green or some of the other fighters like Drew Dober, but I imagine that he's going to do pretty darn well.
Bane, what's the kind of butterfly effect with this as far as Conor McGregor goes? Because they've been in each other's mouths when it comes to, I want to fight this guy, get the money fight. And of course, Conor wants a fast track. Does it mean that Conor maybe isn't going to be back for a little bit longer than we first thought? Or do you think that it just means they're going to give him a little bit more time and then he fights for the title right away? What does it mean for McGregor?
So talking about Conor McGregor, I've got somewhat of an unpopular opinion. And this isn't one that's meant to be disrespectful necessarily, but the guy has won one fight since 2016, and it was Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who is 0-6-1 in his last
BT,
7.
you listening to the man? I don't want to cut you off, but keep going. BT, make sure you listen to what he's saying right now.
Look, I like Conor. I think he is so good for the sport. He brings in eyes. But let's stop talking about Conor McGregor in title conversations. Let's put that to rest. Let's give him a couple tune-up fights. Give him some more fun matchups. I'd love to see Tony Ferguson versus Conor McGregor. That makes the most sense to me. That's the one that I would book. It's Conor McGregor's best chance in the rankings at lightweight. That's the only one that I would really entertain at 155. You want to have him go fight Diaz at 170, close out the trilogy. Boom, Nate goes off. They don't re-sign him in the contract, whatever. That also makes a lot more sense. But let's stop this conversation of Conor McGregor fighting for a belt in any weight class. He does not deserve that, and I don't care about the star power or the eyes or the fun matchup it might be. The dude has won one fight since 2016, and it's Cowboy Cerrone. No disrespect, but let's just stop. It's a dumb conversation, and I'm frankly tired of it.
Yeah, but you tune in if you got the title shot, though, wouldn't you?
Of course I would. Of course I would.
Damn right.
Man, listen, I get it. And you know what? It's weird too, because like I remember Poirier kind of being faced with the same thing where like he was saying payday or title shot, and they were like, we're not giving Conor the title shot. So they had this whole standpoint earlier on. We're just, wondering like, would they ever break on it? But I think ultimately it is the right call. Islam even not have the competition. I think people think he is championship good. And Oliveira's an interesting one because, now he's got the old weight things that are back up an issue. So he's got even more to prove on this too, right? Like he's got to beat the scale and he's got to have a great performance to kind of put all that goodwill back that he's built up with all this, with this incredible run that he's been on.
Completely. And I don't want to reverse gears too much, but to bring it back to UFC London next week, there is one fighter that I do feel that is just incredibly important to mention given his run in the UFC. Chris Curtis, the action man himself. Short notice co-main event on one of the biggest fight nights of the year. Curtis undefeated in the UFC, I believe, and he's found several finishes within that tenure. I am so impressed with this. I don't want to say career resurgence necessarily, but it's a guy that was brought in to lose, if I'm not mistaken, and has gone on a tear and now finds himself potentially top 10 at middleweight against Jack Hermanson with a win next week. I mean, there's no better story than Chris Curtis in MMA right now. In terms of good guys in the sport, look to the action man.
I've got paid on him, by the way, 3 straight times. Decision, knockout. So I'm all about the action man. I'm all about the Bane. Ben Davis, also as always, Bane. Thanks so much for your time. And coming up next, lots of news going on in the fight world. We break it down right here. You're tapped into the BetQL Network.